Crowbar, Rangers at Point-du-Hoc. This is a solitaire game based on the same system of In Magnificent Style, if you remember that game. And that one was about Picket's Charge. Here we are in France on D-Day, and the game covers the action of the American Rangers that had to climb a pretty steep cliff. So here, to get you a sense of what we're talking about, to see some German guns that were there and were in the position to shell Omaha Beach. So we have a very interesting situation here. The game is solitaire mainly, with some options, some variants for multiplayer, for co-op, for competitive game, etc, 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 but mainly it is a solitaire game. In Magnificent Style was a system, the system that allows you to depict actions in which the main problem is to go forward. It's not about complicated maneuvers, because sometimes in warfare that's all you need to do. Press forward, and that's pretty much most of what you do. Of course, it works very well here also because the action is we're coming from the sea, climbing the cliffs, and then trying to take control of those guns that are somewhere on the board. Now, the board is pretty large. Here you see the board, and this is my hand for comparison. So it'll take up quite a bit of table space, and actually you also need more space than that because you need some room to place this other player right here that you use to keep track of the time, victory points, and things like that. The idea is that the map is divided into a grid that you see here, and each grid is divided into columns. You will have American units, one on each column, and they cannot move from column to column. When it comes to movement, all they can do is to stay there, sometimes fall back or press forward. Also, the board, as you see, is divided in different areas. We have 3 rows that represents the sea, and there isn't much that the Rangers can do when they're in the sea other than keep moving and hope that they don't sink, hope that they don't take too much fire from above. We have a special area, which is the beach, and the Rangers will have to climb on the other side of the beach, on top of the cliff, and there's a procedure for that. They may just have to climb, and that's it. They may have a firm grip thanks to hooks and ropes. They may have a shaky grip, and once they get here, then they have to fight against the Germans, and they have to move forward as much as possible. This is not the actual setup. I just put some German units here and there to give you a sense of the situation. Also, we have these gun tokens here that are shuffled and placed in specific locations, but randomly at the beginning of the game, so that you do not know what's on the other side of them. Some do represent the actual guns, not these ones though, and some represent the game effects or nothing. So you have with your Ranger units to get there, defeat the Germans, and then you can look at those gun tokens, and there are other gun tokens there, but again, we don't know where the real stuff is. Finding the guns and destroying the guns is the main way to score points during the game, but there are also other ways, such as, well, not dying. That also gives you points if you do not take too many casualties, defeating German units, finding certain other source of victory points either on the board. Those are the main things. You will play until the end of the game, so the number of turns, and at that point you see how many points you score, and you assess your level of victory or defeat. Other general things, before we start in earnest, we have tokens that represent incoming fire. During Saturday is a special phase representing the bombing of the German positions, so you will get to shuffle these tokens and place them on top of German units. Now, you know that they may have been affected by that, but you do not know the exact effect, which is only printed on the other side. And sometimes there is nothing, it's simply a miss. But you have to go and check. You have to spend actions to do some recon to flip them, so you get a sense of the situation. You may simply attack them, and then you get to flip them and see what happens. During the game, you may use actions to place other incoming fire, but again, I like the uncertainty. It comes from the fact that you know you attack them, you don't know how much that actually did. As for American units, you're gonna have, of course, the boats that will allow you to get next up. Well, get to the beach and then hopefully on top of the cliff. And then you have ranger units. They're coded by companies. We have 3 companies. We have Easy, Dog, and Fox. And you can see then you have these numbers here. That's pretty much the company, and the number is all that matters. These numbers are fungible, so that is you can give change, add and subtract just like money. If the level 8 Fox takes a hit, it goes down to 7. If it takes a hit, you replace it with a token of the same company that says 6. And then if it gets reinforcements, you add points to that. The German units, well, actually, one more thing I want to say, and then we have rally point markers. Each unit will have to stay in its own column, so it can only move forward and occasionally fall back. Behind that unit, there will be a rally point that you use for 2 things. One is to keep track of which units are already activated in a turn. When a unit activated, you flip it, you flip the marker to this side, so you know that. Then, from time to time, you will spend actions to bring the rally marker next to your unit. That will give you several advantages, reducing damage in certain situations, and also in particular, if you take a consolidation action, we'll see what that is, while you are in your rally point, then you're able to restore some forces to add some points to a reduced unit, but pretty much you will have a rally point in each column and a single military unit, and then the boats that will only go, of course, from here to here, and then they stay behind. Don't bring it on top of the cliff because that is weird. German units, they have a level of strength indicated here by that number, but then they have steps like you have in other war games. So it takes 2 hits to defeat a German unit. 1 hit will flip it to its reduced side, and a hit on the reduced side will remove it. And that is also how you will gain prisoners of war, which will give you victory points. Some of the concepts, we have 2 randomizers. One is event cards that will create random events, including they will determine the passage of time on the time increment track. And again, when the action is over, the action is over. So the more of those you draw, the faster the game goes. And then you have event tokens. These are placed in an opaque container. They are double-sided. One side applies to the Rangers and one side to the Germans. When you have an effect that tells you German event, then you draw one and look at that side. Ranger event, you draw a token and you apply the other side. Plenty of events means plenty of variety. Combat dice, they're simply regular 6-sided dice with results from 1 to 6. And then movement dice, I also like to think of them as action dice because there's so much that they do other than movement. They are the heart of the game, and we will see how. Now, remember, you set up the game, you will have all of your companies here, and they're divided by, again, by groups. So here you have the game pieces for the Easy Company, Dog Company, and Fox Company there. At the beginning of your turn, you choose a unit that you have not activated yet, and you activate it, you resolve that activation. Then you activate another unit from the same company. You have to activate units from the same company until every unit in that company activated. Then you choose another company, and one by one you activate their units. Of course, within that company, you have a little flexibility of which one goes first, which is very important. Maybe you want to gain position to outflank an enemy, so then another unit comes and gets that advantage. So you activate the units one by one, but by company. When all of your units activated, then you have an upkeep phase and you repeat. When you activate a unit, the first thing that you do is you choose if you want to roll an activation die or consolidate. Consolidate means that you bring your rally point next to you if it's not there yet. It also means that you can gain points, you can remove shaken markers, that kind of stuff that, well, really helps. Or you can press forward, in which case you roll a die, any of these dice, but usually we want to roll the green die, and then you resolve the effect, whatever it is. If you rolled a stop sign, then you the activation for that unit is over immediately. You flip the rally point marker to the activated side, and that's it. Otherwise, you resolve the symbol that you got, you place the die there, and then you can choose if you want to consolidate or press forward. And same as before. So basically, the activation of a unit will end when the unit consolidates and then cannot activate anymore, or when it rolls a stop sign, or when all 4 dice have been rolled, and well, that's it, even without a stop sign. Now, what do you do with these actions, with these dice? They have different combinations of symbols, going from safer to the most dangerous ones. The general idea is that you want these arrows. Arrows mean advances, which means you advance on your track the corresponding number of spots, 1 or 2, for example. And that's pretty basic. When you're in the water, that's pretty much, let's use this, pretty much all that you can do. Here also you want to advance, but later actually you can trade in actions. That is, you can use advances for other actions, and that's very important because of course it also gives variety to gameplay. So it's not only advance or not advance, it's also, okay, how am I going to use my advances? I can use them for different things. Now, other symbols. These symbols here, those explosions, some are filled out and some are empty. These are regular hits. The unit takes a hit. These are variable hits. They do different things depending on the situation. In fact, the 3 areas on the board, sea, beach, and top of the cliff, work differently. Then we have this symbol here. Then you draw an event card, and very often that means that you will receive a time increment. G means German event. R, somewhere we got R's. They represent ranger events. And then we have other negative symbols that will do bad stuff to you, as you can imagine from this. But this is the general idea. When you are on the beach, in the sea, you gotta press forward. When you're on the beach, as soon as you land, you'll get to roll 2 dice to attempt to get a good grip on the top of the cliff. The chances are not very good, and that represents the fact that historically, in fact, those early attempts did not work very well. Later, you can also spend actions to pretty much launch small rockets, try to get grapple up there. And so at the end of that, it may be that the unit is sitting there in front of the cliff without any ropes, without any real good traction, or it may be that depending on the result, you manage to achieve a shaky grip or a firm grip. Basically what this means is that, remember these dice, they give you a number of advances. If to go on top of the cliff from the beach, if you have a firm grip, it takes a single advance. A shaky grip, 2 advances, and no marker there. It's 3 advances, so that's pretty bad. Finally, when you are up there, again, what you can do and what you must do if you're entering an area with a German unit, you check the incoming fire, reveal that, hooray, the unit takes a hit, and then you must resolve close combat. Once the units are on top of the cliff, they don't come back, so you don't have to worry about these markers. And again, the units will not move laterally from column to column, but they can send reinforcements. If they're adjacent to one another, then they can send reinforcements to each other. So I could diminish, wait a second, there you go. I could diminish this one, but not maybe in the middle of combat, but I could diminish this one to turn that into a 5, and that's the only way in which you can move points, but again, not move the physical marker. As for combat, You use combat dice. Remember, simple results between 1 and 6. You will you have a number, you will use for each side a number of dice equal to half their strength rounded up, and that's the basic number of dice that you have. Then looking at the player aid, you will add or subtract the dice depending on these circumstances. Say the attacker loses a die if shaken, gains a die. Thanks to these other advantages, the defender also will use modifications. You have commanders that you can use for various things. So at the end, you will have your number of dice, and you will roll them separately for yourself and for the Germans. Usually the Germans are the defenders unless there are actions that turn them into the attackers. And then you simply look at the results for all available dice for both sides. Each 1 or 3 is a miss, 4 is a morale loss. If there are morale losses, the player, the side that has the most, has to retreat. Each 5 is a half hit, so one of them doesn't do anything, 2 of them are hit. Each 6 is a hit. And actually, if you want, you can pause and read the combat results in detail. The general idea is that if you take losses, then you will reduce that number, the number on your marker, and the Germans again only take 2 hits to be defeated. And again, there are things such as you get a bonus if the Germans are flanked, which is in fact if there is a unit next to the one that is attacking, that is lending support. You get penalties, of course, for attacking as soon as you get up on top of the cliff and stuff like that. But this is the general idea. It's a press forward game with a press your luck element, in which for each company you will for each unit that activates, you will roll between 1 and 4 dice. You will apply the results. A lot of random stuff will happen thanks to the random events. And that's a general idea. Climb up there, show hell to the Germans, advance much as you can, flip those gun markers, hoping that there is good stuff there, and continue like this until the end of the game, at which point the number of victory points that you accumulated will tell you how well or how poorly you did. Crowbar is a truly spectacular word game. It's so much fun, it's so thematic, so many interesting decisions. I believe that the game was maybe aimed also at casual wargamer, maybe beginning wargamers, but frankly there is a level of complexity there that I'm not sure that I would recommend it to a beginner wargamer. The core idea is so simple, it's push your luck. You have that one in so many simple dice games, heck, even, I don't know, zombie dice that you can learn in 30 seconds. But then there are just so many unique effects to implement around that, from the bombardments, combat that works differently if it's close combat or it's open combat triggered by certain events, different areas of the board that work differently. There's still just a lot to take into account. And the implementation of gameplay also can be a little bit cumbersome if you are, again, if you're not used to the hard procedures that wargamers have become familiar with, have trained themselves to go through, and draw that token and check what it does, and draw the card, and you have to take into account other things also. Oh, the German counterattacks and the relief column, etc., etc., etc. So, lot to take into account. The beginning, in fact, maybe your first game will feel a little too procedural, but not so much. Maybe I would say because once you get on top of that darn cliff, then things become considerably more linear in terms of gameplay, if nothing else, because that's what you need to do. But if you can go through that added complexity, given the fact that the 3 areas of the game work so differently, then the narrative, then really the flow of a story is really strong, because you really had these 3 situations. And one is there's a lot of luck there, you're on the boat, you're keeping your head down and you're hoping to get there, which of course you can think of that as advanced and gradual setup, and it's particularly important because maybe your strong unit just sinks there in the water, or is not hurt too much but it's failing to advance, and meanwhile other units are going forward, so you know there's going to be a gap in your line. What are you going to do, hold back? No, you're not going to hold back. you're just gonna run and hope that those people catch up. Then when you get on the beach again, it's very interesting because you're gonna try to get a firm hold, and maybe you can't, and then you're trying to get as many advances as you can with those dice, etc., etc., etc. And then I would say the main point of the game really starts, the main phase, which is what happens out there. So actually, I would say the main part of the game will be fighting on top of the cliff, and from time to time say, wow, are these people still in the water? Oh my gosh, I have to. The main area operations is there, but it's still fun to see what happens in those other areas where there are fewer choices. Advance in the water, try to climb. And it's important to see if those people will catch up, because although the game is played in parallel columns, there are still interactions that happen when you, for example, trade points from one unit to the other. When you outflank the Germans, then coordinating things is particularly important, if you can do so, because remember, the number of advances that I'm gonna get, I don't know what that's gonna be. I can try to coordinate, which of course means that there is a lot of randomness involved. This is not a game where you get a standard number of movement points each turn, followed by the combat phase, etc., etc., etc. So you have to take that into account. But my feeling is that it really captures the theme well. In this operation here, there really is, well, there is water involved. So we are on a boat and we don't know if we're going to make it there. We don't know how steep the area of the cliff is going to be. Actually, maybe the initial bombardment is going to make part of the cliff crumble, which is going to make it easier to climb. And then I would say the standard chaos of war starts when you're there on the same level with the Germans. A lot of chaos involved. However, it works very well in a solitaire game, because of course I don't have an opponent to surprise me, so I want an automatic system that generates out of randomness, so I constantly have a lot of problems to analyze, and it fits the theme particularly well. War is chaos, Crowbar is chaos, but there's beauty in this chaos. It's a game with such a strong narrative. Again, the three segments of the game almost feel like the three acts of a war movie. It really, precisely because of the specific and unusual configuration of the board by parallel columns, then you clearly have a very strong narrative progression and development. And when you finally make it to those guns, that is gonna be very rewarding, especially if you actually find them, which may not be the case. Then you still have to keep going. There's no vacation going on D-Day or the days right after, because you know the Germans are coming to reinforce. Special events will cause those reinforcements. Then you want to form roadblocks in the back of the board. You will keep going. You'll have stuff to do the entire time as you're waiting for the American relief column to come and help. There's just so much to do. In every part of the game, you do a lot of randomness, but you also get a sense that you have a lot of interesting decisions, especially because you can trade your advances for other actions. It's not only stop or go. I was afraid, as I started reading the rulebook, that was going to be the only decision, which could be okay, but not for such a big production. Big production takes a while to set up, but then you do have a really rich, a really complex, multifaceted experience, with plenty of interesting decisions, plenty of things that you cannot predict, but they will happen in a way that make thematically sense. And even if from time to time they feel unfair in the right way, unfair in a way that, again, makes sense in a chaotic battlefield. I enjoy Crowbar so much. The production is also very nice. Everything looks good. The rulebook does a really good job at explaining the game, I believe. So in general, I'm very, very happy with Crowbar. There's a lot of fun to be had in this big box, big but not too huge. It's a great production. Rules that are smooth. I don't know, the gameplay is all that streamlined just because of the large number of unique occurrences that you have to take into account with when you have two generators of random events, you know, there's a lot of stuff that will go on, and sometimes it's a simple adjustment, sometimes you have a procedure to take care of that. So gameplay is not the most streamlined that you can imagine, but it's smooth because the mechanics and the theme go together so well that helps you implement them. Play thematically and the game will make sense. In general, it's a game that is tough, has plenty of chances, plenty of interesting decisions. Yes, there's randomness, but again, it's the right kind of randomness. Overall, I think it's a spectacular war game, and I cannot recommend it enough to fans of Solitaire war games, or really to any war game, because this game is really good.